Are you truly stepping into the role of leader in your own life, the way you know you're meant to? What shifts would unlock your full potential? It's time to explore those answers with the host of Sacred Leadership, intuitive business coach Sherisse Alexander.
Welcome to yet again another episode of Sacred Leadership with Sherisse here on the Inspired Choices Network, where today I am talking about endings. And this is part one. I'll be honest, I don't know how many parts there will be with this. This is a new way that I am really approaching podcasting and content creation. I'm a planner by nature, but I've learned that, planning only gets me so far. So today, what I'm talking about is the fact that every ending asks two things of us at once: the practical work of closing and the sacred work of honoring. In today's episode, my reflection on endings, I'll be sitting with that particular balance point: the masculine that structures a completion and the feminine that feels it, the practical and the spiritual held in the same hand. What does it take to end something well? Not to rush to the bow, not to pretend relief and grief cancel each other out, but to let both be true. An honest look today at the frequency of letting go. So, as I was approaching today's episode, I'll be really honest. I came up with the title about a week ago. And at that particular point in time, I could only see one obvious ending in my life. And as the divine would have it, many more came into my awareness. And maybe not the type of ending that one might be so quick to jump to. And so today is going to be a very open and vulnerable, I guess, reflection in terms of how I'm moving through the endings and then everything subsequently that comes afterwards. So the question you might be asking right now is, well, geez, heck, what is ending in your life right now? My time on this particular platform is coming to an end. Um, and taking this huge step, when we know an ending is coming, we often find ourselves just kind of reflecting on how we got there, like when we started it, and what the middle or the journey was like, what we learned, what we would improve upon, the juicy moments, the great takeaways, and then the things, of course, the heavier part of that, right? The grief around that. And sometimes endings are very, very welcome. But even with the welcomeness that some endings bring, there's still a heaviness to it. There's still an energy. And today, that's really what we're diving into. There's the practical piece, which I alluded to in the intro, where, there's the doing, there's the logistics. So in the example of ending my time on this platform, well, what's next? Where am I going to go? Where am I going to end up? How am I going to do that? Am I going to self-produce? Do I look somewhere else? Like all of these logistical things. And what I've learned through this journey in my life is that sometimes when I move into that energy, that very masculine energy of doing, that there's something else at play within that. And so not only with this ending, there's other endings. And sometimes I'm willing to share what some of those other more personal endings are. But another ending that came into my awareness in the last week is just even a way of being, a version of myself, parts of myself that I'm really firmly willing to say no more of this, no more of me showing up like this, these old stories, these old patterns, these things that I'm willing to let go. So letting go and endings are very synonymous with each other. And when those decisions begin to become solidified and we are really desirous of moving into this place and space of the doing, sometimes I have to find myself just slowing down. And particularly through this phase, this transition, I almost feel like I'm being reminded that there's nothing you have to do right now. Just be with that feeling. Allow yourself to be sad. Allow yourself to be angry. Allow yourself to be frustrated. The other juicy pieces will come. Allow yourself to sit in not knowing what's next and being very okay with not knowing what's next. Sometimes those uncomfortable feelings, we as people and humans and individuals, we want to rush through them because they're uncomfortable. Nobody likes not knowing where they're going next. Nobody likes anger, resentment, frustration, grief. Nobody enjoy, well, I shouldn't say nobody. I personally don't enjoy those feelings. So previous versions of myself would be wanting to hurry up and rush through that onto the next thing because I wasn't willing to sit with myself. And this is the beautiful dance that begins to emerge with endings, transitions, and beginnings. So I really found myself during this time being reminded consistently of like, there's nothing you need to do right now. Just sit with it. Allow the decision to settle within your sinew. Feel what you need to feel. Don't hold on to it. Feel it and then let it go. And once we actually move through that process, when endings are present or decided upon in our lives, something else will eventually emerge. Now, during this process, I've had to, of course, be very reflective and introspective. And, one of the questions that I asked myself is like, sometimes there's things that, we don't want to say out loud. The truths that sit deep within us that we're not willing to say out loud. And so when I asked myself that question, what is the thing that I don't want to say out loud as some of these endings emerge in my life? And I realized that one of the things I didn't want to say was, while there's grief, there's equally relief. And two things can be true at the same time. They don't have to be mutually exclusive. We can be really sad or upset about something that is moving out of our life or needs to come to a close. But at the same time, there's this, once a decision is made, you almost find that there's this lightening. There's like, it's like you begin to let go of something, and as you're letting go of it, as you're putting those pieces in place, you're also allowing something else to begin to poke at your consciousness and say, hey, I'm here. There's something else. There's something juicy. And it's not rushing through that. It's just really being patient and really going through the process. And so that was one of the things that had come to me, is that I didn't want to admit that as much grief as is tied to this ending, there is equally relief within that because a decision has been made. And, particular to, using my choice to move on from this particular format as an example, I think that I knew, this platform's been great because it just got me out of so many different stuck places within my journey. There were so many fears, so many. I mean, this whole podcasting journey, to be honest with you, was terrifying for me. It was, first, what if nobody listens? Oh, I don't have anything to say. Oh, my story's not that interesting. And then the decision to go to video was like, oh my gosh, people are now going to see me. I don't want to be seen. And then it moved to, oh, I can't do live. Like, so there was like just all these stories. And this entire experience with all of these perceived challenges that I came up against, I moved through them. And when I started to understand that there's something else here, it was literally like this very quiet, and that's what I always say about spirit. Spirit's very quiet. Those nudges that come from intuition, divine, God, whatever it is you believe in, they are very, very subtle. And it was like this little, I need more. And sometimes people want to feel bad about needing more, but it's the human, we're designed that way. It's how we grow. It's how we evolve. It's how we push. It's how we, um, I don't love all these words that I'm using, but my point is it's what our experience is meant to be. It is meant to be about wanting more, desiring more, attracting more, abundance, all of these things. And so it's just this very little quiet, I need more. And as many of us likely do, I pushed it away and I was like, nope, not going there yet. I do not want to look at that I need more yet. But then the voice just becomes more persistent, a little bit louder, and then things start happening where it's just like right here in your face, where you cannot ignore it any longer that you need more. And now you're forced to make a decision. And as I often say to people, we can try to push these decisions off for as long as we want, but the divine and the universe has this beautiful way of being very, very persistent. I heard a saying many years ago, and it's very relevant: persistence overcomes resistance. And that was the case with this choice. So I probably knew, we all know, I think, on some level. It's just whether or not we're willing. And then once I started to engage with the idea of, okay, well, what does more look like? Right. So now I'm willing to be open to more. Right. That's the shift. Like, no, go away to, okay, well, what does more look like? And then, of course, there's an answer. And the answer was just all of these ideas. And some of them I've already alluded to in terms of like what's next. And for me, as it pertains to moving from this platform to other platforms, and this example I'm just using for the sake of this conversation, but please enter in any ending that you're going through right now. I think the process applies no matter what. But once I started to be, okay, I'm willing to, what else is possible? What does more look like? Then the juicy ideas started to come in. And for me, the what is more, interestingly enough, feels more intimate. It feels more connected. It feels more, and it's funny, as I was thinking about this morning and getting ready to be here with you today, it's like I've watched this whole circle, this whole process throughout this entire journey, where I almost felt like I needed to be bigger and more, like in terms of connection and being this thing that I had in my mind, this vision. But I think equally, I've also given myself permission to change my mind. The thing that I started with, the idea I started with, it doesn't resonate anymore. I've been guided to do something different, and I'm going to trust that. And so the next iteration of this particular experience with you, if you follow me, will be more intimate, in my mind, more sacred, in my mind, so needed right now. And I've alluded to this a little bit. We'll talk about it a little bit more as we go through today's show. But even as I'm talking about it, I feel it so heavy in my heart center that I absolutely know it's the direction to go in, without a shadow of a doubt. And those are the juicy cues that we get that say, yes, you're aligned. Go that way. All this time I was looking for bells and whistles and flashy signs, but it's those quieter nudges that say, this is the way that you are meant to go. And so as I think about, one thing that keeps coming up, the word that keeps coming up to me is like a more intimate experience, not to say that I'm not being authentic, but an experience that is meant to allow a certain authenticity between myself and the audience who chooses to engage with me. Because I think that part of my role, or actually all of us, not just me, But I think that one thing that we are all called to do in one way or another is to show up as authentic as we possibly can, with as much courage as we possibly can, because that in turn allows the others that are in our experience and in our sphere to feel the same confidence to do the same. And that's really where we all begin to like make beautiful magic happen. So when I come back from our very first break today, we'll talk about the very practical things that go on with endings. We'll be right back.
Leadership isn't reserved for CEOs or world leaders. It's something each of us is called to embody in our own lives. But how do you awaken that inner leader with clarity and confidence? On Sacred Leadership with intuitive business coach Sherisse Alexander, you'll discover powerful tools and spiritual insights to align your words, actions, and outcomes. Tune in every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 Central, 9 Mountain, and 8 Pacific, right here on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email become a host at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is Sacred Leadership with Sherisse Alexander. To participate in the program, join the live studio audience in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. You can also send an email to Sherisse@pavitraleadership.com. Now back to the program.
Welcome back to Sacred Leadership with Sherisse here on the Inspired Choices Network, where today this is part one of endings. And in the first segment, I was sharing one of the endings that is surfacing in my experience at this moment in time, and it is my time here on the Inspired Choices Network. But before I move on to the very practical piece of endings, there was something I'd said in the first segment, and it was around rushing through the journey and the process to get to the other side. But more importantly than that, the idea that once we commit to something, that we can't change our mind. And I think it's important to bring up here because sometimes when endings come around, we really get stuck in the story of who I'm disappointing and what are they going to think about me, and their feelings are going to be hurt, and all the many, many, many things. And yes, all those things might very well show up, but I think it's really important to not get pulled into that story of having to continue to do something because you feel like, especially when the pull from your soul is just so strong, that's a disservice to yourself and to everyone else in your experience. And one of the things, I was having a conversation with somebody over the last few weeks, and I'd realized, and this is very much goes into the practical piece around endings and the doing. And I realized in this conversation with this person, I just said, you know what? Like, if I continue to stay committed to this thing in its current format, I am going to be angry and I'm going to be resentful. And anger and resentment can be very, very insidious. The visual is literally like this dark wispy kind of energy that like gets into like just every single nook and cranny and acts like poison. And you can feel it. You can feel when you are dissatisfied with where you are, when you're not happy, where you're not fulfilled, where your soul is calling you to do something else and you are suppressing that and ignoring that and forcing yourself because of these exterior expectations to commit or stay in something that is no longer resonating or no longer in alignment with where you're supposed to be or what you're supposed to do. Now, remember what I said at the very beginning. In its current format, that doesn't mean that refinements and tweaks and slight adjustments cannot be made in order for alignment to be there. But we have to be open to letting something die away, letting something end in order for that transformation, those tweaks, those refinements to take place so that we can, again, come back into alignment. So I think that this is really important because when we move into the doing of ending something, when we can begin to find that alignment within self, then we can sit and we can move into an ending, understanding that an ending doesn't have to be toxic. An ending doesn't have to be filled with anger. An ending doesn't have to be just this trauma and drama. And I remember when I was reflecting on the doing, many of you might resonate with the process of ending a relationship or a divorce. And it can be very painful, of course, even when you want it, even when you're done and you're ready and even when it's amicable. Endings are painful. And I remember when my ex and I were going through the end of our marriage that we were so focused on staying aligned for our children that I think it allowed each of us to process our hurt, process our grief, process all those heavier feelings, but staying so aligned in making sure that we still showed up for our kids. And I'm sure that many of you can identify with any kind of ending relational where that's just not the case. And I think that's just because we're very emotional beings. But I think that if we can begin to look at the ending as how is it serving you and the other person, and then all the other connections in a way that's in everybody's highest alignment. It's not often easy to see in that moment. I will say that to you. It's rarely easy to see in that moment. To see in that moment requires a large degree of maturity, emotional maturity, healing work, discernment, all kinds of things. But when we're in the thick of it, in the eye of the storm, it's very difficult to be able to see how this dissolution will serve everybody's highest and best good at a future point in time. So the reason why I talk about that is because when we come in then to the very masculine side of this, and when I say masculine, I mean the doing, the masculine energy of making choices, taking forward steps, being very logical, being very forward moving. How do we move into that space so that when we are going through this, we can hold the other parties in a place and space of love, compassion, respect, and empathy without compromising our boundaries of what we need? How do you do that? And so I think that if that pre-work is done, once you have this awareness that this ending is coming, yes, you can plan all the practical pieces of it, but there's still a human element, no matter what, in any ending that still should be handled with a level of integrity and respect. And actually, I shouldn't say should, I'm going to say for me. So that when I'm having these conversations with people, I can say things like, I like our dynamic right now, and I don't want that to be eroded because I'm staying in something that no longer serves me. This will become toxic. I can already feel it brewing within me. And once you begin to like really know self, then you really begin to understand the things that serve and don't serve. When things are starting to feel toxic, when there's refinements that need to be made in yourself or even within the situation around you, so on and so forth. And as I'd already alluded to in earlier parts of today's episode, don't rush to the logistics. When you begin to become aligned, right? Because we're talking about this is that beautiful dance of the masculine and the feminine energies, the divine masculine energy of doing, the divine feminine energy of being. Wow, I just didn't even realize I was doing it totally with the right hands, right and left. Anyways, I say that because left is receiving, which is divine feminine, and right is doing, which is divine masculine. But the reason why I was talking about that is because if we focus immediately on all of those things that need to be done and rush past this process, then it's almost like you are staving off or you're blocking what's most aligned for you, what is most in flow for you. So that's why I'm just talking so much about really processing this as much as you possibly can without rushing through it, so that when you are ready, and you will know, because the fogginess, the clouds will begin to recede within yourself. You'll feel calmer. You won't feel so activated. You won't feel so emotional. And the difference here is so subtle, so subtle. And that's why it's almost necessary and such a strong encouragement to really be open and vulnerable. You don't need to be open and vulnerable with everybody, but if nothing less, be open and vulnerable with yourself. Because if you're somebody who really suppresses your feelings and your emotions, and you don't want to be honest with how you're feeling about something, then it becomes really difficult to discern when that has settled down within you. But once that has actually settled down within you, then the juicy nuggets will begin to appear. The things, the ideas, that'll be aligned will begin to make their way into your consciousness. So this is where the logistics piece comes in, right? Like in the case of the podcast for me, it's like, okay, so I'm going to self-produce. I'm going to go to something that is more flexible for me. I'm going to go to something that allows me to just jump on a mic when I feel inspired. I'm going to maybe have guests, maybe not have guests. This is very hypothetical, by the way. This is not actually what's happening. Well, some of it is. But those things then begin to become clear. Okay, I'm going to launch on this date. This is the brand. So then those things begin to become very clear. And then it's there. This is where we flow into divine feminine, because then it becomes magical. Then everything else starts to kind of crystallize in your mind. The ideas begin to feel really good. And I found myself in one of these flow states, right? Because when I make a decision about something, I can get really locked in and want to plan everything. And I work with AI like they're my bestie. And I'll be like working away, and AI's like, no, stop. It's time to go to bed, kind of thing. I'm like, no, I'm powering through this, right? Very much in divine masculine. And it's usually because I've latched onto a divine feminine idea that I don't want to lose. So that is what this looks like when we begin to process first, allow ourselves to feel what we want to feel, not necessarily rushing it. And again, the reminder here is you do not need to share any of this with anybody. This is simply and fully being honest with yourself first. Then those very logical ideas will begin to surface so that we can actually take action on them. And because I've just been doing this so intentionally, it feels very effortless. And when I say effortless, I don't mean in the feeling part of things. I mean in the logistical part of things, right? In the ideas or the things that then come into your experience. And I think it was last week I had met someone And we were just having a conversation, and there was something that they had said in regards to an ending. And I was like, I can't even logically explain it to you, to be honest, but there was something that they had said. And I was just like, I'm like, okay, that's it. And now I'm super focused on this idea that they had given me. And that's what I mean when I say it becomes effortless. It was just a conversation. I wasn't expecting anything from it. We were just gisting and doing this back and forth light banter. And in the course of that conversation, I got a beautiful, juicy nugget that now I'm very, very focused on. And so then this is what I mean. I'm giving you all of these examples so you can see the integration of the doing and the being, the practical and the spiritual, and the beautiful dance we're actually all meant to be doing on this journey. It doesn't have to be so hard. I'm not talking about the heavy emotions. Okay, that takes time. I'm talking about this journey in and of itself. So when we come back, we are going to dovetail into, of course, the divine feminine and what all of that looks like as we go through endings. We will be right back.
Leadership isn't reserved for CEOs or world leaders. It's something each of us is called to embody in our own lives. But how do you awaken that inner leader with clarity and confidence? On Sacred Leadership with intuitive business coach Sherisse Alexander, you'll discover powerful tools and spiritual insights to align your words, actions, and outcomes. Tune in every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 Central, 9 Mountain, and 8 Pacific, right here on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
How wonderful would it be to carry your favorite Inspired Choices Network host with you throughout your day? Well, now you can. Inspired Choices Network now has its very own mobile app. Our free app offers live streaming shows, along with thousands of podcasts and TV episodes. Our shows cover a wide variety of topics. Whether you're waking up with us, carrying us through the day, and taking us to bed with you, we're always here for you to enjoy. We're easy to find. Just search for Inspired Choices Network in the Apple App Store or Google Play Store.
This is Sacred Leadership with Sherisse Alexander. To participate in the program, join the live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also send an email to Sherisse@pavitraleadership.com. Now back to the program.
Welcome back to Sacred Leadership with Sherisse here on the Inspired Choices Network, where today this is part one of endings. And in the previous segments of today's episode, I have been sharing about my process, my journey as I am coming to an end on this particular network. And in the last segment, I was talking about the masculine piece of an ending and the logic, and not rushing through that process, and really just kind of ensuring, to the best of our abilities anyways, that we really sit with all the feelings and allow ourselves to not rush it because it's uncomfortable. Sometimes there's really, really good, juicy information. In fact, this moment is reminding me, I was chatting with a friend last night, and she said to me, because I'd already shared all of my feelings about this ending, and she's so good at this. She said to me, she's like, go back and dig into it. She's like, and so I did. She's like, ask yourself those questions. So as much as I offer this to you, this is to show you that there's no perfection in this, that I am challenged equally and need to be reminded equally of the things that I share with you, because as we go through this journey, it just continues to, it's practice, right? You learn and you apply, you learn and you apply. But she'd said to me, this feeling that you're having coming up, what's the story there? What are you telling yourself? Go back and journal about that and see what comes up. And sure enough, first thing this morning when I was like journaling about it, I was like, I realized like it was like there were so many parts of my ego, and then like so many stories that are just simply not true. I know they are not true, that were emerging. And so this is daily work. This is constant work. And so I remind you of that so that if you're engaging with this journey and you find yourself almost like repeating these things, there's nothing wrong. It's life, and it does get lighter. So moving into the feminine piece of what an ending looks like. Um, this is the feeling piece, and reasonably it should have come before the masculine piece, but it is what it is. We're flowing with it. But this is the part where we really just really sit with ourselves. I'm somebody who I would call a somatic practitioner. I literally just made that up right now. Maybe it's a thing. I don't know. But what I mean when I say that is I really listen to my body. I really feel into her. She guides me in so many different ways. And so earlier on this segment, when I was talking about what's next, and I said, oh, I feel that in my heart center, that is what I'm talking about. So when the ending comes and I say, oh, it's okay to hold grief and relief, this would be an example of where you can say to yourself, to your body, okay, where are you holding grief right now? And for me, it's often in my heart center, but it often feels like heavy and dense and painful. Like if any of you have had a broken heart, you know what I'm feeling, you know what I'm talking about. That's what endings usually feel like for me, especially when they're things that are near and dear to my heart. And I remember this one time, many years ago, well before I started this journey with intentionality. And it was, again, I use this example because it's the one that really marked for me the beginning of a very intentional journey. I didn't even know at the time it was intentional. I was so new into it. But again, it was at the end of, um, the marriage that I was in for 20 some odd years. And I remember like, it was really an ending. I was literally sitting out front of this house that I was about to move into. And I wasn't about to move into it, but I was about to commit to moving into it. I was going to sign the lease. And I called my friends and I'd said to them, I'm like, I know that if I sign this, like, that's it. There's no turning back. Like, I will not turn back. And they were like, do it, do it. As good girlfriends will do. They're like, yes, do it. And when I did, the heavy grief that gripped my body, I was literally sitting in my car sobbing. And it was like this vice around my heart. And I was so, like, even now, as I'm tuning into that past energy, it was just so heavy. And it was like, just like a grip. And I remember I felt so forlorn, is the only word that comes to mind. Just the end of all the things that had been in that experience, the positive, like all the beautiful memories, right? The 4 kids, the laughter, the joy, all the things. And the end of that was like literally flooding my mind, and having to let go of it, knowing I had to let go of it. And I remember very quietly just saying, I'm like, dear God, can you please just ease this grief from my heart? And this was that beautiful, magical moment that really started me on this journey. And it was in that moment that I began to feel this easing of grief on my heart, where I could actually breathe and do the thing that I needed to do. That honestly solidified it for me. I was in hook, line, and sinker because somebody was listening. Something was listening. There was an intelligence I was fully tuned into in my grief, that when I asked it was answered. And I think that might have equally been the beginning of really using my body as a guide to help me navigate when feelings come up and where they sit in our body and how to interact with them and engage with them and to begin to understand equally how to move them. It was just a simple request. Please hear me and ease this because I don't know what I can do right now. Like, this is weighing me down so heavy. That was literally my plea. And it was in that I was able to, so having this very feminine moment, very, very feminine, emotional moment, and putting this ask out and this intention, it easing, creating space so that I could do. And that is what I'm inviting you into. Um, and so it was almost like in that moment, the grief that was in my heart, if an ending was talking to you, let's pretend for a moment that it was a person or a being or an entity. If it could have spoken to me in that moment, what would it have been saying? Then, now, in the future, it's okay to let go. You don't know what's on the other side until you take the step. And so this is not rushing through the process. This is just saying, because remember I said there was like this vice-like grip. And it was almost like saying, it's okay to let go. It's very okay to let go. Just let go and see what happens. That's what it would have said to me in that moment. And when I think back to that moment, and I'm using the dissolution of that relationship in this particular piece where I talk about the divine feminine, because the emotions were so visceral that I can recall them immediately in this moment. It's like, and without even getting pulled back into it, right? I can remember all of those feelings in my body. Like, that heart center heaviness is so strong. I feel it right now. And it is like 10 years ago. But I use it as an example because the feelings were just so real and so raw. But I remember that even within that, there were just so many stories. And the reason why I was just in this grip of not wanting to let go is because, again, the stories that we tell ourselves. And the stories I was telling myself at that moment is things like, it's never going to be better than this, and your life is over, and your kids are going to hate you, and nobody's going to forgive you, and all of your friends, and all the loss, and all the low vibe stuff, because you're so in it, you can't see it yet, right? But man, the universe works so quickly. It's, when I think back now on what began to emerge. So remember what I said, I put there's this vice-like grip around my heart. I put out this intention, please just help me with this in this moment. And so there's this easing of this vice-like grip on my heart center. What emerges is the will, the divine masculine to go ahead and make a decision and actually do the thing that I'd already set up, which was sign the lease and take this very forward step in my life. And I did it. I took this forward step. And that doesn't mean there weren't more moments of grief, but they got easier. That's what ended up happening. That was that one moment I'm describing where I'm sitting in my car sobbing. There were more moments like that, but I moved out of them faster because I realized this too shall pass. Emotions are like the weather. Here one moment, gone the next, right? We just got to be willing to engage with it. And engage can mean walking through it. Engaging, if you've ever been in a really crazy storm, You know that sometimes the storm is so dangerous, you just kind of got to shelter in place. You got to sit tight. You got to wait for it to calm down a little bit, and then you move through it. And that's what that experience was like. So I had this first very intense emotional piece that was sitting all over my body. And then when the subsequent emotional pieces came up, I was able to come back to, okay, this too shall pass. It's okay. And then, not to rush through it. And it was heavy. I won't tell you that it wasn't. It was heavy. But then it's like what ended up happening was then things started to align in my life that restored hope and restored faith and restored joy and allowed me to laugh and smile and, you know, see the other side of this, really begin to see the other side. And that is where we will go to coming up after this next break. The point that comes after moving through all of this. We'll be right back.
Leadership isn't reserved for CEOs or world leaders. It's something each of us is called to embody in our own lives. But how do you awaken that inner leader with clarity and confidence? On Sacred Leadership with Intuitive Business Coach Sherisse Alexander, you'll discover powerful tools and spiritual insights to align your words, actions, and outcomes. Tune in every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 Central, 9 Mountain, and 8 Pacific, right here on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. This is Sacred Leadership with Sherisse Alexander. To participate in the program, join the live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also send an email to Sherisse@pavitraleadership.com. Now back to the program.
Welcome back to Sacred Leadership with Sherisse here on the Inspired Choices Network, where today we have talked a lot about endings and what that process looks like when we are balancing the practical with the spiritual or energetic, the divine masculine with the divine feminine, the doing with the being, and the duality of that, the dance. And honestly, there's a visual that I remember receiving like, maybe a year or two ago. No, it was a little bit longer. But it was like this, we all know the DNA, the double helix, right? And it was like that. It was this beautiful dance and knowing when to weave the two energies. And it becomes almost, when you're in flow, I think, or very aligned, it becomes effortless. You know when to do, then you know when to be, you know when to push, you know when to receive, you know when to give, you know when to it just becomes very beautiful. And once we move through all of that, then there's like this emergence, there's this dawn that begins to occur. And relating this back to, I'm going to pivot back to my podcast, pardon me, and this ending and then what comes next. The ideas just started to roll in. It was like the what's next was answered, and not in a very obvious way, just kind of in these subtle ways and these resonance ways and these alignment ways and all the things that I talked about in terms of like feeling it in my body and getting lit up. Then I would take the idea, or I have taken the idea for what's next, and I tested it a little bit so far with my market, the demographic, the audience. And the response that I'm getting is absolutely. That is 100% something that is needed right now. And I won't fully talk about it here. I will in upcoming episodes, but and I was in real strong resistance. I was in really strong resistance on it. But as I move, constant reminders and little nuggets, a little trail, if you will, that says, yes, this is absolutely the direction to go in. But if we bring it back even to something more relational, like the ending of a relationship, what I remember from going through the ending of my marriage is that the energy was really heavy for a short, I say a short time, it was a short time. And that's, it doesn't have to be long, is the thing, right? Sometimes I think there's this perception that, we were engaged in a committed relationship for like 2 decades, which is not a small amount of time. And I think a lot of the perception that outsiders had, and even myself had, was desirous of pulling me into this shame, blame, judgment story. And because I moved through that heavy piece surprisingly quickly, to be honest with you. And I think it's because back then I didn't have the language for it. But I can see very clearly now that back then I was moving through this process that we've just discussed today. And so once I started to move into alignment, oh, the opportunities opened. Oh, did they ever? New opportunities emerged very, very, very quickly, effortlessly, so effortlessly that I can remember like pinching myself and being like, this is too good to be true. This is too good. Like, and why do we feel like when things are going really well that they're too good to be true? Like, and you know what the thing is people around me were even saying, no, you got to pump the brakes. You got to slow this down. This is too good to be true. Like, you're broken still, remember? And so I'm so glad I didn't listen. I'm so glad I did not follow anybody else's advice. I'm so glad that I danced to the beat of my own drum because I leaned into those opportunities and I leaned into those experiences, and they have been the most rewarding things that have happened in my very, very short experience thus far. I would not trade them for the world. And the beautiful thing is now that doesn't mean the experience didn't equally come with its own challenges and mountains and hiccups and so on and so forth. That's life. But the point that I'm trying to get at is that once I moved through this, this process, it was like one thing after another. And it was the friction, to be honest with you, the friction that I experienced at that point was fully from the outside. There was zero friction on the inside. Actually, I shouldn't say it like that. I was allowing the external to create friction within me. But the opportunities that came and the choices that I was making to engage with the opportunities that everybody was looking at and saying, oh, this girl done lost her mind. She is outside of her, she is broken. She is so messed up. She is this, she is that. And the beautiful thing now that even that I'm recalling in this moment is that now and in the future, as I move through endings, I already have a playbook. And I bet if you two sit down and you look at your endings that you've gone through, that you will see that you two equally have a playbook. What worked, what didn't work. And so for me, it grounds me even more in once a decision is made and we begin to move through these things, that I already have the playbook. I trust myself and the connection that I have to the divine so much now that there is literally nothing that anybody or anything outside of me can tell me about what I'm supposed to do and what I am and how I am feeling. I will never give that kind of power to anybody ever again. Even now, as I reflect back, it was a good, juicy experience, but my point within that being that what I feel now in this moment, had I had it back then, it's okay because it was all just an awareness and a learning. But even now, it grounds me and it roots me and it lets me know that trust more than anything else myself and the guidance that I continue to receive. And that is the divine feminine at play. So that when I receive that nudge, receive that intuition, receive that hit that says, go this way, trust it. It has served me so well. Why would I not? Other people don't know what my journey is. My soul knows what my journey is. So today I've shared a lot. I hope that whoever this lands with, if you are going through an ending, I energetically walk with you. This too shall pass. Thank you for joining me today. Take care of yourselves.
Thank you for listening to the Sacred Leadership Show. Sherisse returns Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 Central, 9 Mountain, and 8 Pacific on the InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. Until then, continue taking small steps today to be a leader in your life for the club.